What's up, everybody? Um, Back with another video. Uh, so today we are going to be looking at step 9. Um, the last one was about uh, probabilities and possibilities. Today we're going to talk about probably what I think is one of the it's one of the most game-changing steps if you can really learn it, and if you can really put it into practice, it's probably one of the ones that's going to make an absolutely huge difference if you can nail it down. Um, and the step goes like this: it's about time, it's about sacrifice and gains. Um, but it reads like this: that I realize that I make choices in the light of my circumstances, meaning the best decision for today may be the worst decision for tomorrow. Um, and so it's essentially about a step that is asking you to, as the classic phrase goes, play that tape all the way through. And I think when it comes to the addict, an addict often gets into a mode or a mentality, a mindset of what is more often than not termed instant gratification. So this is the step, excuse me, that is meant to address that idea of instant gratification and why it is fundamental for somebody who is trying to fix a substance use habit to understand a simple concept, and it's that it's not about the immediate moment anymore. It's not about, how do I feel today? It's what this process is changing from, or sacrificing rather, the feeling of today for the sake of a better feeling tomorrow. And I think that this is one of the most difficult concepts for an addict who is recovering to really understand or really to grasp. It's definitely one of the most difficult to implement. But with that being said, I'll read to you how it reads in the material. Um, Change is a short term sacrifice for a long term gain. I believe there is a reason why there are so many quotes about how your actions today are going to have lasting effects in the future, and why it's so important, again, for someone who is trying to change a substance use habit to understand this. After all, your life can either be easy now and harder later, or harder now and easy later. Or as some people have put it, you can pay now and play later, or you can play now and then you pay later. Um, I think that many addicts have the attitude that says that I'll cross that bridge when I come to it, not realizing though that they are the builders of the bridge they are going to cross. Um, so an addict needs to acknowledge a reality. And the reality is that, again, what they're stepping into, what they're trying to do, this process of change, is it's agreeing to a commitment, and it's a commitment of sacrificing the short term for the sake of the long term. Uh, it is very uncomfortable at first. I think anybody who has done this will admit that this can be a very uncomfortable thing to do. It's probably not going to be fun. But the problem is we shouldn't let uncomfortability and the idea of trying to have fun dissuade us from making what could be a life altering commitment and a life altering change. I'm almost 11 years clean from heroin. And to say that the way I handle being a sober individual now is the same as I handled it back then, well, that would kind of be, that wouldn't be true. It's a lot different now. Whereas back then, when I first started the process, it was very intentional. Basically, every action, every thought that I had to consider was essentially, it was an intentional thought. And what I mean by that is I wasn't operating off of my automatic instincts. I wasn't operating off of my impulses, if you will. I do kind of like the phrase of first thought wrong. That's simply saying that at the beginning, you have automatic thoughts, you have automatic processes. That if you were to rely solely on them, then you would quickly find yourself essentially back in the same position that you were in before, the one you're trying to move on from, the one you're trying to give up. And so it takes it takes some time, it takes effort, and in order to make this new way of thinking stick. It doesn't happen overnight. And just to be clear here, by time and effort, I'm not talking give it a couple of weeks and see what happens, or even a couple months. Um, if we're going based off the research, on average, they typically say that it takes about 5 years for a new idea or for a change that you're trying to make to really start paying off for you. Again, that's 5 years. Not 5 weeks, not 5 minutes, not 5 months, but 5 years. And so I know there's some people who kind of struggle with that idea of commitment, that we're asking you to, at least give 5 years commitment to this time, or to this change rather. Celsius. But if you're, I guess I'd give you a little visual exercise. If you're struggling with that idea of, well, am I willing to put in the effort for 5 years? I want you to visualize for a second that, let's say there's somebody standing in front of you, could be me, could be anyone you can think of. And this person is, well, they're presenting you with a couple options, giving you a choice, right? And the choice or the options are this, is that they say to you, if you commit to this process of change, or for the addict to sobriety, if you commit for, let's say, at least 5 years, then what I am guaranteeing you, and again, this is hypothetical, let's just visual exercise, and you're guaranteed something if you stick to this for at least 5 years. And the guarantee is this, that whatever you want will be yours. So you want a beautiful house, perhaps, maybe that's what you're focused on. You want a beautiful house? Well, here you go, here's the deed. I've got it for you. It's already signed, ready to go. You can get the deed. It'll be yours in 5 years' time, if only you stay committed to this. Maybe there's relationships that you want fixed desperately. And so, okay, well, I'll go fix those relationships and I'll show you what it looks like. But that relationship will only be fixed in 5 years. And only if you stick to this commitment. Maybe you're going through a custody battle with your kids, perhaps. Well, I've got the court documents, right? The ones that say you get the custody back. And all I need, though, is 5 years of your dedication, 5 years of your commitment, and here you go. It's a guarantee that you get these kids back, never to be taken from you again. Again, I just need a commitment of 5 years. And so maybe you want peace of mind, right? All right, well, in 5 years' time, if you stay dedicated to this, then we'll give you peace of mind. We'll deal with your mental health issues if that's what you're struggling with. You have depression, guaranteed 5 years' time, that depression will be taken care of and you will no longer be depressed. Now, again, the prerequisite or the obligation on your part is to just stick to this change, right? If it's drugs, stay sober, and do that for 5 years. And if you do that, all of this, everything that you want, perhaps, will be guaranteed to you at the end of those 5 years. And they'll be given to you free to do whatever you want with them. And on top of that, to make it easier for you, what I'll do is I will show up in front of you every single day for the next 5 years and essentially remind you, show you everything that's waiting, and remind you that 5 years commitment, this is what you get. And I'll do that every day for those 5 years. And the question is, do you think that if that were the scenario, if that were the case, that you could be able to happily and strongly commit to that 5 years if you had those guarantees in place? And if, again, it was promised to you, no questions asked, here you go. Again, just 5 years commitment. How many of us would do that? And how many of us would find it difficult to stay committed to that? Again, you're having this shown to you every day, to re-up the motivation when you need it. When you feel like giving up, well, here you go. Here's the guarantee. And then, again, how many of us would find it difficult to commit to that? I ask this question of my groups and get generally the same answer every single time, that number one, nobody would really think that it would be difficult to commit to, and then number two, they all think they would absolutely stick to it. And I think that a question like this that was posed there, or a scenario like that, is rather telling. In my opinion, it speaks to what the real issue is here. And it's not disease. It's not disorder of any kind. I believe what the real issue here, and what this question kind of exposes, is that our issue is one of motivation and commitment. Is what you're thinking is the motivator for you for trying to make this change. If you're trying to make this change right now and you're watching this, are the things that are motivating you currently, do you believe they are strong enough to keep you motivated? Do you believe that they are worth it? Do you believe that, let's say, if I were to take away any of those things, any of those motivators, that you would stick to it? Again, I think that this is the real issue here in addiction, when someone's trying to beat this thing. In a lot of cases, I don't think it's that people don't want to. I think that they are either too wrapped up in what's currently going on and don't really have their mind focused on what the future is going to look like, and not just what the immediate moment looks like, but what is that future going to look like. And then on top of that too, do you even really have this planned out? Do you have, commitments like that, things or motivators rather? Do you have motivators like that are strong enough that you'd be willing to dedicate at least 5 years time to? Um, Again, these are the two things that I think will make the biggest impact here: motivations and commitment. See, my problem is, at least from the treatment world, when we spend all of our time focusing on the disease nature of this or the disorder aspects of it, you're going to miss entirely this idea of what are your motivators and what are you committed to? And then how strong are those and how can you make them stronger? And so we shouldn't neglect these areas of this process. Now, if you're struggling with this, there's a little thing that I like having people do, another kind of visual exercise, and it's to develop a vision then. If you don't have anything that you think is strong enough that you would make a 5 year commitment to, then we need to work on, well, what are your goals? We need to work on, what are the things in your mind that you think would make this kind of change worth it? And so again, I do another visual exercise with them, and it's a long-term visual exercise. And I'd simply call it, developing your vision, developing what it is you're trying to work for and trying to work to. And so when I do this with them, I tell you, picture, we're trying to formulate a moment, a specific moment. And the moment is what you might imagine individually would be that moment where you're sitting there, or it's a moment in time when you're looking at everything that you've done, you're looking at everything that you've got, and you're saying to yourself, okay, this was worth it. The struggle was worth it. The change was worth it. I think that every addict who is contemplating this idea of quitting has a scenario for this in their head. I know I did. And it usually amounted to me saying, well, if this, and this lined up, then I don't think I would do this anymore. And that's the kind of thing that we're looking at here. Because I think wrapped up in that is then what you should be working for. Whatever it is you say is, if this, and this lined up, then like I said, I'd quit. I wouldn't do it. If this relationship was right, or if I had meaningful work that I was doing, or I don't know, if you're really superficial, if I had this house or if I had this car, then I probably wouldn't do this stuff anymore. So what does that look like to you? And when we're creating this vision, I emphasize with them that we need to make it as real now, mentally, so that we can increase the chance that it can become more real later. And the way you do that is by getting into the details then. Most people, when they're thinking about this, they just say, oh yeah, one day I'm going to get to that point, and one day I'll have this or I'll have that, one day. Well, let's pick the day then. Let's start with that. Pick the day. I'll kind of lay out my example as I walk through this. So for me, in my case, my day would be May 31st. Of any year, it doesn't matter. It's just, I'm going to pick the day of the year that I think this would happen on. It'd probably be May 31st. That's a significant day for me in my life, and that is the day that I would imagine I'm sitting around and I'm saying, okay, this all was worth it. The struggle was worth it. The suffering sometimes was absolutely worth it for the sake of getting what I'm visualizing here. So pick the day. Next, pick the time of day. I'm a morning person, so for me, this would be probably 6:30 in the morning, something like that. You know, it's just a great time. It's beginning of the day. Sun's usually just coming up. And so with that, you know, you got the day, you got the time. Now think about the weather. All right, on this day that you are creating this vision, what's that weather going to look like? Um, I would want it to be, I don't know, not too hot, but not too cold either. Let's go with mid 60s, right? I think that's a good temperature. You don't have to put too much on, nor do you have to take too much off. But I'd pick mid 60s. You know, maybe a little breezy. I like a breeze. Is it going to be cloudy or anything? Yeah, a little bit of clouds. You know, I'm picturing sunrise. You know, sunrise is just coming up. And when a sunrise comes, you know, it's always better with a little bit of clouds because that's, you know, the color will reflect on them. And so mid 60s, breezy, pretty clear sky with a little bit of clouds, sun just coming up, right? Maybe a little bit of fog too. Fog usually adds a pretty interesting element to a sunrise. Next, after you pick day, time, weather, think about, well, where you're at when this happens. You know, for me, where I'm at is something that it's still in the dream. I don't have that yet. In my vision, where I'm at is going to be essentially, it's a place that doesn't exist yet, but it's a goal. Ideally, I want a house on a lake. You know, I want water somewhere near it. And so I'm going to be around water. I know that for a fact. And I'm going to be on my property around that water. Um, where exactly? I don't know. I haven't quite figured that out yet. Do I stay where I'm currently at, or, you know, got goals and aspirations to move to other places? So am I in that other place yet? More than likely, yeah, probably. And so where is just talking about, okay, give this vision a location. The next part to it is, okay, what things do you have? Right? So day, time, weather, where, and then what things do you have? So this is just talking about material things. You know, I'm not going to pretend that, while I don't think we should be thinking superficial per se, I do believe that, you know, things are important to people. We all want, you know, we all want toys and everything else. Um, you know, what things do I have? Well, I'd like to have a few cars. I am a car guy. And I would like to have, you know, a few good cars and whatnot. I'd like to have a decent sized house. I don't need a huge one. I do know one thing though, is that whatever house I got is going to have a nice big porch that stares over that water. Um, and so more than likely, I'm going to be sitting on this nice long porch in the morning when this is happening. Probably drinking a coffee and listening to a good podcast of some kind. So, you know, add into that those things, right? Next, you want to decide then who is with you at this time. For me, it's going to be the important people in my life, right? Family members, mostly, as well as, you know, lady friend and tiny human. And so they're going to be with me. And if you want to get a little bit more detailed with that, well, the people that are with you, you know, what are they doing at this time? Even break it down even further. What are these people wearing at that time? You know, get as much into the detail as you want to, just again to make this as real as you can right now, so that it can become real later. The next part to that, so you got day, time, weather, where, what things do you have, who's with you. Next part of this, probably the tougher part, is who are you at this point? You know, so what personality changes might have happened. How's your attitude? How's your thinking? What's your outlook on life? Has that changed? How do you interact with people now? Um, the basic rule and the basic idea is this, is that if who you are picturing in this vision, if that person is vastly different than who you are right now, then that should tell you something. That should tell you that you got to start working on you. Again, if in that vision you're picturing someone who is completely different than who you are right now, then that should tell you that you are not happy with who you are right now, or maybe that there's still a lot of work to be done with who you are right now. And then the next question should be, well, what am I waiting for? Because there is one part to this vision. While a lot of these things may be distant in the future, there is at least one part that you can start working on right now. And that would be this idea of who are you in that vision. That is something you can begin the work on. That is a part of this vision that you could really start making real to yourself right now. And so I encourage you to do that and look at the ways in which you can start creating this new person, or start turning into this person that you want to become, the person that is in this idea, the person that is in this vision. And then, it's an amazing thing that as you do that, then it kind of creates what we would call, like a snowball effect. As you start becoming more of this person you're envisioning, then that starts making it real. And as that becomes real, then guess what you're going to start thinking? Okay, if I made that real from this vision, then what else could I end up making real from it? And so a perfect place to start with this is just with, who are you in this, and what's different from the person you're dealing with right now? And then what are the changes that need to be made? Other things to consider with this are, for instance, like, what's the quality of your relationships? If you're sitting here and you're saying that your relationships at that time are going to be a lot different than they are now, then just like the idea with who you are, and you got to change that. If the vision is different, then if your relationships are different, then again, here is another area that you could start the work on, and you could get that ball rolling. So those are kind of the main parts to this. Now, if you want to, you can dig further into it, create it. I believe that you should create as much detail with this as you can, so that, like I said, you can start developing it in a real way up in your mind and increase the chance that it becomes real later. It's kind of like the law of attraction, right? Law of attraction simply goes, if you got something and you can envision it here, then it's got to be out there somewhere, right? Like if I told you, stretch out your hand and imagine there's an apple in it. Well, you've seen an apple before, so and you probably held one. And so you can do that. You can envision that apple, and you can it's almost like if you do it detailed enough, it's almost like you could actually feel it right here. And again, the idea of the law of attraction is, if you can feel it here, and you can see it here, then that means it is out there somewhere, and you need to find it. And you need to go and grab it. And so that's kind of the same with this visual exercise of vision, right? And so when we're asking ourselves, what are we willing to sacrifice in the short term for the sake of a long term, and then what does that long term look like? Well, if you're lost on that, then create the vision. Create this idea, create this goal. Pretend it's like that guy who's standing in front of you and saying, hey, I'm guaranteeing you this stuff. You just need to stay committed to this process. That's what creating that vision does. And that will make, at least from what I've observed, and it's been my personal experience too, is that if you can do that and you can nail that down, then that's going to make this idea of sacrifice in the moment much easier, because you have something tangible, something real that you believe in, that you are doing the work for, that you're struggling for. And that just makes it all more worth it. All right. So when it comes to this idea of decisions today we make in the light of our circumstances, meaning that what's best for me today may not be the best for me tomorrow. We should be looking at these decisions that we're making in the light of what our vision is. I obviously have a vision for my life going forward, and that is a specific reason as to why I don't engage in certain things. It's because I've got this idea of where I want to be. I've got this idea of where I want to go, and I know the things that I could do that would totally ruin that chance of me getting that. And so that's the same for you. Again, if you're kind of lost, if you're somebody who doesn't know the right decisions to make, then a good rule of thumb: don't do the things you know would screw it up. I'm pretty sure we all have a good idea of what those things would be. An example, just returning to substance use. For me, going back to heroin and doing that would clearly ruin any chance I have of attaining these things that are in my vision, if you will. And so I operate and make my decisions based off of, okay, how does this fit into that vision? And then not only that, but it provides, again, some guidance. The question of, okay, what can I do right now that could increase these chances, that could increase the chance, rather, of me getting to that point in my life where, again, I'm saying that, or I'm looking around and I'm saying that everything is good, or I've made it. That is what we're working for. You need to have a good sense of what that is. And so if you haven't taken the time to think about it, then my goodness, now's the time. If you're lost and you don't know what you're doing this for, well, you're the only one who can at least create this idea of what am I doing this for. And so if you haven't done that, well, you need to, because I guarantee if you nail that down and you get that clearly thought out, then it could make the world of difference for a lot of you. So, all right, I've been talking for over a half hour now. But either way, just remember, we're making short-term sacrifices here for the sake of long-term gains. All right? Get rid of the idea that the only thing that matters is the present moment. That's not what we're working for anymore. The present moment is not the most important anymore. The way we feel in the current moment is not the most important anymore. Everything we do is for the sake of setting us up down the road. Not for the sake of making sure everything's right today, but for the sake of making sure that everything is better for us in at least a year's time. Something like that. So, all right, that's it for now. Y'all, there's hope out there, but the key is that you need to be the one who is setting up this vision. You need to be the one who is detailing the goals that you want, or the goals that you have. And so if you haven't done that, then get going. What are you waiting for? Until next time, we'll see y'all. Peace.